At our son's 5th birthday party, my wife snuck into the guest room with her boss. I found them together while everyone else was singing Happy Birthday. I didn't say a word. I just quietly closed the door. 2 days later, she came home to an empty house, a frozen bank account, and a letter that simply read, "Enjoy starting over." I swear I can still hear everyone in the living room singing Happy Birthday when I opened that guest room door. The cake candles were probably still melting. Kids were laughing. Parents were recording. And there she was, my wife, pressed up against her boss like she forgot she had a husband or a son or a whole damn life outside that room. They didn't see me. Not at first. I didn't gasp or shout or drop something dramatic. I just froze for half a second, felt something inside me go eerily quiet, and then I closed the door. Soft, slow, like I was tucking in a secret I already knew was going to blow up everything. I walked back out to the backyard where the kids were running around. Someone handed me a slice of cake. I took a bite even though I couldn't feel my hands. My son tugged at my shirt and asked where Mommy was. I told him she'd be right back. She came out a few minutes later, hair messy, face flushed, pretending like she'd just been washing her hands. Her boss followed a minute after that. He didn't even make eye contact with me. She barely did. The rest of the party felt like a dream I wasn't supposed to be in. I talked to people. I smiled for pictures. I cut the extra slices of cake. Nobody knew that my marriage had just ended in a room decorated with superhero wrapping paper. I didn't confront her, didn't ask, didn't blow up the party. I went to bed that night with her lying beside me like she hadn't just ripped our family apart on our son's birthday. All I could hear was her breathing, steady, calm, almost bored. For 2 days, I pretended to be the same husband she thought she could keep manipulating. I made breakfast, packed lunches, kissed our son on the forehead, played normal while something dark and steady was forming in my chest. And when she came home on the second day, she walked into an empty house. No furniture, no photos, no clothes, no toys. Just blank walls. Her bank cards didn't work. Her accounts were frozen. Her access to anything tied to me was shut off. And on the kitchen counter, alone in the space where our life used to be, was a single envelope with 5 words. Enjoy starting over. I did. But here's the thing. She thought the worst part was losing the house. She thought it was the money. She thought it was me leaving. She had no idea what was really waiting for her. And the truth behind what she did. The real reason she risked everything on a birthday afternoon? That part. That's where things go from bad to sickening. We lived in Fort Collins, Colorado. Quiet neighborhood, good schools, the kind of place where people wave when they drive by and actually mean it. I met my wife, Jenna, at Colorado State back when we were both 20 and thought that love automatically meant trust. She was studying early childhood education. I was finishing a business degree and working nights at a warehouse. We weren't some whirlwind romance. It was slow and steady, quiet dinners, long walks, shared homework sessions. I thought that was a good sign. I thought slow and steady meant solid. But looking back now, all I see are little cracks I ignored because it was easier. Her family adored me. Mine adored her. When we got married at 25 in a small park in Loveland, it felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. I remember thinking how lucky I was that someone as bright and warm as her chose me. God, I wish I could shake that younger version of myself. When our son, Mason, was born, everything shifted. I stepped into the role of provider without thinking twice. I picked up a better job at a logistics company, started climbing the ladder, and within a few years we were comfortable. Not rich, but stable. Solid. Safe. The kind of safe I thought people built families on. Jenna went back to work when Mason was 3. She took a job as an assistant at a private preschool. That's where she met him, her boss, Daniel. I didn't think anything of it at first. He was just another name she mentioned in passing. Just her supervisor. Just someone who was a little intense but nice enough. In the year leading up to the party, she got different. It wasn't obvious all at once. More like tiny details stacking up until they looked like a pattern. She worked late more often, but brushed it off. She stopped wanting to do small things with me, grocery runs, casual TV nights, late-night talks. She started guarding her phone the way someone guards a secret they hope you never find. But she still smiled. She still played the perfect mom in public. She still kissed me goodbye every morning, even when the kiss felt like routine instead of affection. I'd ask if something was off, and she'd sigh like I was exhausting her. "You're imagining things. Work is stressful. Please don't make this a thing." So I stopped bringing it up. I tried to be understanding, supportive, patient, all the things you're told a good partner should be. But inside, I felt like I was living with a roommate who was slowly moving out one emotion at a time. Then came Mason's 5th birthday. She planned everything down to the color of the balloons, like she needed the perfect show for everyone else. I remember her being on her phone the whole morning. I remember thinking it was weird but letting it go because I didn't want to ruin the day for our son. And then, that guest room door. And everything clicked in one horrifying second. But the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was what I would eventually learn about why she did it. Why she risked our marriage, her job, our family. Because what I thought was just an affair, it was something so much colder. Something that had been brewing long before the guest room. And the first real crack in her mask was still coming. After the party, after that soft click of the door, after watching her pretend like nothing had happened, everything in my head got sharper, clearer, almost numb. I didn't confront her because I wanted to see what she'd do. I wanted to watch her behavior without the mask she thought she was still wearing. For the next 2 days, I paid close attention. The first thing I noticed was how relieved she looked whenever I acted normal. Like she was waiting for a bomb to go off and was pleasantly surprised that I still made coffee the same way. Still packed Mason's lunches. Still kissed her cheek before work. She didn't kiss back. She also didn't mention the guest room once. Not a single guilty glance. Not one awkward pause. Not even a flimsy excuse. It was like she genuinely believed I never saw anything. But there were moments, subtle ones, where something in her face would tighten. Like she was fighting with her own conscience but only half-heartedly. She'd check her phone constantly. She'd step outside to take calls. Her boss's name popped up more than once on the screen. I didn't snoop. Didn't need to. I'd already seen enough. The second day, she came home later than usual. Mason was already asleep in his dinosaur pajamas, and I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch a Rockies game I didn't care about. She walked past me without saying much. "I'm exhausted," she mumbled. "Rough day." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Messy hair, tense shoulders, that faint smell of someone else's cologne she probably hoped I wouldn't recognize. I wanted to ask her one question. "Do you think I'm stupid?" But I didn't, because by then, the part of me that used to need answers was gone. Instead, I got up, told her good night, and went to bed. The next morning, she left early. And when that door closed behind her, I quietly began dismantling the life she thought she still controlled. The financial part was easy. I handled our money. I knew the accounts. I knew what I could legally separate. I knew what was in my name and what wasn't. By the time she finished her shift that day, she had no access to anything tied to me. No savings, no checking, no credit lines. Frozen. Blocked. Silent. Moving everything out of the house took hours, but I'd arranged help. Trucks. Storage. A friend who owed me a favor and didn't ask a single question. By nightfall, the place looked abandoned, and I remember standing in that empty living room, the air echoing, and thinking, this is what she did to us months ago. I'm just making it visible. But even then, even with all the anger and all the numb execution of the plan, something kept bothering me. Something she'd said a few weeks earlier. It was small, offhand, but now it stood out like a flashing sign. We were driving home from the grocery store when she said, almost casually, "You know, if things ever went south between us, you'd land on your feet. You're adaptable." At the time, I laughed it off. I thought she was talking about my job or my ability to handle stress. Now it made my stomach turn. Because the way she said it, light, detached, almost rehearsed, felt different with hindsight. Like she already knew something I didn't. Like she'd been preparing for an ending long before I opened that guest room door. And the real escalation, the part where everything turned from a betrayal into a full-on ambush, was about to come when I finally discovered what she and her boss had actually been planning. And that discovery didn't just break the trust. It detonated it. I found out the truth the day after she walked into the empty house. Not because she confessed. Not because she apologized. Not because she showed up crying or begging or explaining. No, she didn't call me at all. The first call I got was from HR at her preschool. I almost didn't pick up. But I'm glad I did, because that call is the reason I understood the full weight of what she'd been doing behind my back. The voice on the other end, a tight, nervous-sounding woman, asked if I had a moment. She said it in the same tone people use when they're scared to open a door because they don't know what's on the other side. She told me Jenna hadn't shown up for work that morning. She also told me certain documents Jenna had submitted over the last few months weren't adding up. Documents? I asked her what she meant. There was a long silence. And then she told me Jenna and her boss had been applying for a mortgage together. A house. Not the one we lived in. A new one. They'd listed themselves as a couple. She had submitted paperwork stating she was separated from me and that I no longer resided in the marital home. She did that months before the birthday party, while still sleeping in my bed, still eating dinner at our table, still letting me pay the bills, still letting me kiss her goodnight. I remember sitting down on the arm of the couch as the HR woman kept talking, her voice cracking with each sentence like she couldn't believe the mess she'd stumbled into. She apologized for calling me. She said she didn't know who else to contact. She said she didn't want the school involved in personal matters. But certain things had come to light. Then she mentioned the thing that hit me in a way even the guest room hadn't. Jenna had also been using my income on the application. She used my salary, the salary she knew she wouldn't have access to in the life she was building with another man, to help qualify for a mortgage for the two of them. And Daniel, her boss? He'd signed off on everything as if I didn't exist. The two of them weren't just having an affair. They weren't just sneaking around behind my back. They were building a life, financially and legally, using me as leverage. Using my stability, my credit, my income, my reputation. She wasn't preparing to leave me. She was preparing to replace me while quietly siphoning pieces of my life to support her new one. The guest room wasn't a moment of passion. It was a victory lap. A celebration of a plan she believed was already locked in. And the reason she looked relieved when I acted normal? Because she thought she still had time to finish the process. But here's the part that almost made me sick. The HR woman said she'd seen Jenna tear up the emergency contact form a month ago and fill out a new one. She listed Daniel as the person to call in case of crisis involving her or her child. Not me. Our son. My son. She'd replaced me on paper before she'd replaced me in bed. And that was just the first twist. The second? The part that made me realize this wasn't just betrayal, it was calculation? That one was still coming. But it would explain everything. The coldness, the secrecy, the shift in her behavior, the mortgage, the affair, the rehearsed lines. And when I finally learned it, it made everything she did look monstrous. The moment I hung up with HR, something inside me went still. Not angry, not panicked, just steady. I finally understood that what she did wasn't impulsive or emotional. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a marriage drifting apart. It was strategy. It was architecture. It was months, maybe a year, of methodically building a new life using the skeleton of the one we had. And once I saw it that way, my next steps became painfully simple. I didn't want to confront her. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want a screaming match. I wanted documentation and a clean path to an outcome she couldn't twist. So the first thing I did was call my attorney. Not a divorce lawyer, my business attorney, the one who handles complicated contracts and financial disputes. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, all he said was, "All right, we're going to do this quietly." He helped me pull every financial thread she'd tangled herself into. He helped freeze everything that could be frozen, protect everything that could be protected, gather every piece of documentation HR had flagged. He told me exactly what she would try to claim and what counterproof I needed. By noon, we had a strategy. By evening, I had printed copies of the mortgage documents she and Daniel had filed, the false separation statement, the credit pulls made in my name without my permission, and the new emergency contact form. It wasn't just cheating. It was fraud. The second part of the plan was making sure she couldn't spin the narrative. She was the kind of person who performed innocence so well that people apologized to her while she was burning their house down. I knew what she'd do if she found out too early. Cry to everyone we knew, twist every detail, claim I was abandoning the family, paint herself as the victim, so I cut that route off at the knees. I sat down and wrote a simple, factual letter to her parents, then to mine, then to two of our closest mutual friends. 3 short pages. No emotion, no drama, just dates, copies of documents, and a calm explanation that Jenna had been planning a second household. Financially and legally, behind my back. I didn't send the letters yet, but they were ready. The third part of the plan was moving Mason. I wasn't going to let him be anywhere near the blow-up she was about to walk into. So I packed his things and took him to my sister's house in Longmont. He thought it was a little vacation. We made pancakes and built forts and played Mario Kart like nothing was wrong. He never saw me break. Not once. The fourth part was the house. I wasn't going to just leave it empty. I wanted her to walk into something that made her stomach drop. Something that would force her to understand, without a word, that I knew everything. So after the movers cleared the last of the furniture, I placed one single envelope on the kitchen counter. The one that read, "Enjoy starting over." I did. But I wasn't done. Because while she was about to lose her home, her access to money, and every lie she'd built, there was still one piece missing. The second twist. The real core of the whole thing. The part that explained her coldness better than anything else. And I didn't know it yet. Not until her sister called me the next morning. Crying so hard she couldn't even say Jenna's name at first. What she told me made everything fall into place. Her sister, Erica, never calls me. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even when Mason was born. She's one of those people who stays on the edges of family gatherings with a glass of wine and a polite smile, like she's always halfway out the door. So when my phone buzzed at 7:13 a.m. and her name lit up the screen, I already knew something was off. When I answered, all I heard at first was shaky breathing, then a choked sound that didn't even feel like words. Please don't hang up. I told her I wasn't going anywhere. There was another long silence before she finally got it out. Jenna told me everything last night. My whole body went cold. But I didn't say a word. I just waited. She said you abandoned her. Erica continued, her voice tight. She said the house was empty and the bank accounts weren't working, and she didn't know where you or Mason were. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I wanted to hear what Jenna had told her. But the next sentence flipped my entire understanding of this nightmare upside down. She didn't tell me she cheated, Erica said. I mean, she did. But that wasn't what she was upset about. Not really. I frowned. What do you mean? Another shaky exhale. She kept repeating the same thing over and over again, like it was the only part that actually mattered to her. What did she say? Erica paused, like she needed to brace herself. She said, he ruined everything. We were supposed to be approved this week. I didn't speak. I barely breathed. She wasn't crying about losing you, Erica continued quietly. She wasn't crying about Mason, not even about getting caught. She was crying because her plan fell apart. The mortgage, the new life with her boss, the timeline she thought she controlled. I felt something sick twist inside me. But then Erica said the part that changed the entire picture. She told me she only did all of this because Daniel promised her something huge, something she thought she couldn't walk away from. I held the phone tighter. What did he promise her? There was a rustle, like Erica was pacing. She said Daniel told her that the preschool was going to expand, a second location, and he told her that if she committed to him, he'd make her the director of the new site. Full salary, benefits, a position she'd never qualify for without him. My stomach dropped. Erica kept talking, voice breaking. She said she didn't love him. She said she didn't even like him half the time. She said she did it because she thought it was her one shot to level up. Her words. She kept repeating that, level up. I closed my eyes. This wasn't an affair rooted in emotion or attraction. It was transactional, calculated, deliberate. But then came the part that twisted the knife. She told me something else, Erica whispered. Something I don't think she ever meant to say out loud. My pulse hammered. She said she started planning to leave you before she ever slept with him. She said she needed to secure the mortgage first. She said she used your income because, quote, he'll never ask. I went silent, but Erica wasn't finished. She said Daniel warned her not to tell you anything early because if you got upset, your income might change. And she needed you stable until the loan cleared. My jaw clenched. And then, Erica said, voice almost trembling. She said the quiet part. The part that scared me. She admitted she only stayed in the marriage the last year because she wasn't financially ready to leave yet. Your marriage was a bridge, placeholder, a resource. The phone felt hot in my hand. Erica inhaled shakily. She didn't cry over you, she whispered. She cried over losing a promotion she cheated for. She cried over losing a house she was buying using your name. She cried over losing the plan she built around you like you were a tool, not a husband. I didn't speak. I didn't have to, because now the truth was clear. The affair wasn't the betrayal. The mortgage wasn't the betrayal. The lies weren't the betrayal. The real betrayal was that she saw me as infrastructure, a financial foundation she could quietly replace once she climbed high enough. But there was still one more layer, one more revelation that exposed the true rot underneath her choices. And it came later that night when I finally learned the real reason she did what she did, the coldest, most calculated part of all. I found out the real reason that night. After Erica's call, after a long day of sitting with the pieces of a life I didn't recognize anymore. It came from someone I didn't expect, Daniel's ex-wife. She messaged me out of nowhere on Facebook. A short, clipped line. You don't know me. I was married to Daniel. We need to talk. Her name was Lauren. I remembered seeing a picture of her once. Pretty, quiet-looking, the kind of woman who always kept her hair tucked behind one ear. I didn't know they were divorced. Jenna never mentioned it. We exchanged numbers, and when she called, she didn't waste time. I left Daniel 3 years ago, she said. He's not who he presents himself to be. I didn't say anything. I just let her speak. He's obsessed with control. He doesn't want partners, he wants dependents. Women who feel like they owe him something. Women he can shape. His word, not mine. He tried to turn me into someone who couldn't survive without him. She paused. And when I say that, I mean financially, emotionally, professionally, all of it. He builds a cage and makes it look like a gift. My skin crawled. But then she said something that made every hair on my arms stand up. He likes women who are still connected to stable men. Husbands, boyfriends, anyone with a steady income. He convinces them they can do better, that he'll elevate them. Meanwhile, he slowly isolates them until he's the only support system they have left. I already felt sick. But the next line? That's the one that hollowed me out. He always targets women who feel insecure about their accomplishments. Women who think they're behind. Women who think they're not making enough or not achieving enough compared to their partner. I felt something tighten in my chest. Lauren kept going, her voice steady but exhausted, like she'd carried this warning for years. He finds their pressure points. He amplifies their envy. Then he offers them a shortcut, a smarter route, a way to skip the years of work and jump straight to the life they think they deserve. My jaw clenched. And once they're hooked, she said softly, he encourages them to leave their partner, but only after he's made sure the partner's resources have been used to get the ball rolling. He calls it transferring stability. My stomach dropped. Then she added, your wife wasn't in love with him. She didn't even want him. She wanted the life he promised her. The status, the authority, the feeling of being chosen for something bigger. Silence. And she needed your income, Lauren finished. Your name, your stability. She needed to bleed your life dry until the moment she could step into a new one that made her feel powerful. I didn't speak for a long time, because this wasn't cheating. This wasn't even the mortgage scam. This wasn't insecurity or a bad marriage or miscommunication. This was ambition rotted into something predatory. A hunger for validation twisted into cruelty. A need to be more but without ever earning it. She didn't betray me because she fell out of love. She betrayed me because she wanted to reinvent herself as someone superior, and she saw me as the scaffolding she could climb and kick away. And when she got caught, she didn't cry over losing me. She cried over losing the version of herself she thought she could finally become. Jenna wasn't a victim. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was calculating, cold, driven, hungry for a life she didn't want to build, only hijack. And the chilling part? Daniel did this to multiple women. It was a pattern, a system. But Jenna? She didn't just fall for it. She embraced it. She signed the papers. She played the roles. She used my name like a stepping stone. She let herself become part of his machinery because she liked the version of herself he dangled in front of her. And in her mind, I wasn't a husband. I was an asset, a tool, placeholder, a resource to extract until she could step into a life where she finally felt important. That was the truth, the real reason, the cold, horrifying core of all of it. But if she thought she'd walk away from this whole thing with dignity, she had no idea what was coming. Because she hadn't seen my final move yet. Say next for part 8, The Revenge. The morning after Lauren called me, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not grief, just a cold steadiness that felt almost surgical. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and every step was legal, clean, and airtight. The first move was filing for emergency temporary custody of Mason. My attorney had already prepared the paperwork. Between the fraudulent mortgage application, the affair with her employer, and the instability she'd created, the judge didn't hesitate. I walked out of that courthouse with full temporary custody and a hearing date Jenna couldn't talk her way out of. The second move was turning in the documents to the preschool's governing board. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Daniel had used his authority to manipulate employees, falsify paperwork, and involve himself in a financial scheme with a subordinate. Within 48 hours, Daniel was placed on leave pending investigation. Jenna didn't know any of this yet. The third move was delivering the letters. The ones I'd written days earlier. I mailed them to our parents, our closest friends, and one to Jenna herself. I didn't add a single emotional sentence. Just facts, copies of the documents, timelines, and a simple closing line. This is the truth. I will not debate it. By the time she received her letter, her parents had already called me. Both of them in tears, apologizing over and over, begging to see Mason, promising they had no idea what she had been planning. I told them they could absolutely see him. But Jenna? No, not yet. The fourth move was the one that finally broke her facade. 2 days later, she showed up at my sister's house in Longmont. I only knew because I saw her through the camera doorbell. Wild, frantic, mascara smeared, hair in knots. She pounded on the door until her fists went red. When I stepped outside, she froze. Her face crumpled into something desperate, but not remorseful, cornered. "Why would you do this?" she snapped, voice cracking. "Why would you take everything from me?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even step closer. "You took everything from yourself," I said. "I just stopped letting you use my life as fuel for the one you were building behind my back." She shook her head violently. "You don't understand, it wasn't like that," Daniel promised. I held up the paperwork, her forged separation statement, her mortgage application with Daniel, her misuse of my income. She went still. "This isn't a marriage," I said quietly. "This is a crime scene." She burst into tears, but it was the same kind I'd heard about from Erica. Not grief, not regret, panic. "How could you leave me like that?" she sobbed. "You left a long time ago," I said. "You just didn't walk out the door." The final move came a week later. The preschool board officially terminated Daniel. Jenna was suspended pending investigation. The mortgage was denied and flagged for fraud. The hearing granted me full custody due to her deception and instability. She was ordered to move back in with her parents until she could prove basic stability. When she walked out of that courtroom, I saw it the moment it finally sank in. Not the loss of me, not the loss of our house, not even the loss of her job. It was the loss of the future she thought she could steal. She looked hollowed out, deflated, like a spotlight had gone out. I didn't smile, didn't savor it, didn't throw any last words her way. I just turned and walked out of the courthouse. Later that night, after Mason fell asleep on my chest while we watched Monsters Incorporated, I realized I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. And as I turned off the TV and carried him to bed, I whispered something to myself. Not to her, not to Daniel, not to anyone else. Just for me. Sometimes starting over is the best revenge.